Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom nestled between snow-capped mountains and whispering willows, there lived a beautiful princess named Snow White. Her skin was as white as the first snowfall, her lips like roses, and her hair a cascade of midnight black that fell down her back like a silken waterfall. She was known throughout the land for her kindness and her laughter, which echoed through the castle halls like wind chimes in the breeze. Now, Snow White's stepmother, the queen, was a woman of unmatched beauty, or so she thought. Day in and day out, she would stand before her magic mirror and ask, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" And the mirror, obedient to its magical programming, would reply, "My queen, you are the fairest of them all." This daily affirmation was like nectar to the queen's vanity. It fed her ego, making her feel like the sun around which the world revolved. But one fateful day, the mirror's response changed. "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" the queen asked as she stood before her mirror. And the mirror, for the first time, replied, "My queen, Snow White is the fairest of them all." The queen's perfectly sculpted face contorted in a mask of disbelief and rage. The idea that someone else could be fairer than her, it was preposterous. It was an insult to everything she had ever known. Her icy blue eyes flashed with anger as she whispered, "How can this be? I am the fairest. I must be the fairest." But the mirror's verdict was unchangeable. Snow White indeed was the fairest in the land. The queen paced her chamber, her mind racing. She couldn't accept this. She wouldn't accept this. Then a wicked plan began to form in her mind, a plan so devious, so cruel, it would make even the darkest shadows blush. Calling for her most trusted servant, the queen commanded, "I want you to take Princess Snow White into the Black Forest. Make sure you bring her back to me, dead or alive." The queen's voice dripped with malice, each word a venomous drop. The servant bowed, his face pale under the queen's terrifying glare. He understood the queen's obsession with beauty, her inability to accept anyone as beautiful as her. And he knew this order was not just a command, it was an obsession made manifest. As the servant hurried to carry out the queen's orders, Snow White was going about her day, humming a merry tune. The princess was known for her infectious laughter and her spirit as bright as the morning sun. Little did she know that a dark cloud of danger was forming on the horizon, driven by the winds of jealousy. When the servant finally reached her, he conveyed the queen's orders. Snow White's heart skipped a beat. She could sense the malice hidden beneath the servant's polite words. The servant, unable to bear the sight of the princess any longer, averted his gaze. He couldn't bring himself to look at her as he carried out his dreadful task. The Black Forest loomed ahead, dark and dense, like a gaping maw ready to swallow everything that entered it. Snow White's heart pounded against her ribs, but her chin was held high. Fear was a luxury she couldn't afford. As they ventured deeper into the forest, the servant led her to a clearing where a small cottage nestled amidst the trees. Smoke curled from its chimney, promising warmth and refuge. The servant knocked on the door. Soon, it was opened by a dwarf, his expression shifting from surprise to suspicion. More dwarfs appeared, their faces etched with concern. They had heard tales of the queen's ruthlessness. When they learned of Snow White's identity, they ushered her inside, offering her food, warmth, and above all, their protection. Meanwhile, back in the queen's castle, the magic mirror shimmered, reflecting not just the queen's image, but her thoughts, her fears, her obsessions. As the mirror watched Snow White find solace in the dwarf's cottage, it knew the queen wouldn't rest until she had destroyed that happiness, too. Back in the cottage, Snow White found comfort and joy. She helped the dwarfs with their chores, laughing as they teased her about her rosy cheeks and nimble fingers. The days turned into weeks, each day filled with warmth, friendship, and contentment. Snow White had never felt so free, so truly happy. However, the queen wasn't as oblivious as the others. She was aware of Snow White's haven with the dwarfs, and this knowledge churned inside her, turning her calm facade into a brittle shell. She questioned her mirror, demanding to know if Snow White's beauty had faded. But the mirror revealed a different story. Snow White was not only alive, but her beauty was blossoming, untouched by the harsh realities of the world. Driven by this news, the queen decided to pay a visit to the dwarf's cottage herself. Disguising herself as an old peddler woman, she knocked on the door. When the dwarfs answered, they were wary. The queen's influence over the kingdom was well known, and they feared her grasping power. Snow White, however, was curious. She stepped forward, her innocent gaze meeting the queen's calculating eyes. The queen, with a forced tremor in her voice, offered Snow White a basket of goodies. Among them was a shiny red apple that looked as if it had been polished to perfection. Snow White, intrigued by the apple's allure, reached out to take it. In that instant, the queen's carefully constructed facade crumbled. A wicked smile spread across her face. She had found Snow White, and soon she would have her beauty for herself. As Snow White bit into the apple, her vision blurred. The dwarfs, realizing the gravity of the situation, rushed to Snow White's aid. They carried her into the forest, laying her down on a bed of moss. Tears streamed down their faces as they huddled around the princess, hoping against hope that she would wake up. But Snow White's breathing slowed, her eyelids fluttered, and then her heart, which had been beating in time with the forest's drum, fell silent. Overcome with grief, the dwarfs left Snow White in the forest, placing a small wooden plaque at the head of the moss bed. As days turned into nights, the forest echoed with the dwarfs' lamentations. Their song of sorrow was a mournful melody that spoke of a princess who was more than just fair. Yet fate had a twist in store. One day a prince, known for his kindness and adventurous spirit, was riding through the forest when he heard the dwarfs' sorrowful song. He followed the sound, drawn to the heart of the forest where he came across Snow White lying in the clearing. The prince, captivated by the beauty that radiated from Snow White, even in death, felt a connection that transcended the boundaries of life and death. He lifted Snow White's head, his thumb brushing against her lips. In that instant, a single tear rolled down Snow White's cheek. The prince, taken aback, leaned closer, and when he did, Snow White's eyes fluttered open, emerald green and shining with life. The prince, stunned by this unexpected turn of events, helped Snow White to her feet, and together they walked out of the forest, leaving behind the whispers of the wind and the song of the sorrowful dwarfs. Upon returning to the dwarf's cottage, the dwarf rejoiced, their song of sorrow now replaced with a joyous melody. They celebrated Snow White's return, unaware that the queen's thirst for power was far from quenched. As for the queen, she continued to check in with her mirror, hoping to see the light of Snow White's beauty fade. But day after day, the mirror reflected the same radiant princess, her beauty undimmed. This constant reminder of her stepdaughter's beauty drove the queen to the edge of madness. And that is the end of the story. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a like. Your support means a lot to us. Also subscribe to our channel for more fantastic stories. See you next time.